Yo, Fallen.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good, man. I really needed you to talk to that German dude. I was thinking, I was asking myself if you're gonna be better than me on that guy. Man, it was terrible.
Oh, that took place at like 6 a.m., a couple hours before I wake up. I'm on a good schedule now, but if there's like a recording, I would watch to see what he said. But it sounds like you destroyed him well enough without me.
In the end, though, but at first he was like, "Oh, when you guys say it's absurd, it's just like your preferences and shit like this." How would you address that? Now that maybe people are interested to hear, maybe you can say more, or
I mean,
your
there's
thought.
two things. There's two things to address. When he says it's just your preference, is that supposed to be some retort in the sense of like denying some claim that's made? Like, were you claiming anything further than that? You know, because it's not as though there was some initial proposition in the debate if you're just asking someone to name the trait. So it's not like saying anything. It's like if I say something like, "Hey, how was your day?" And they're like, not that good." I'm like, "Oh, that sucks." Well, that's just, your perspective. It's like, okay, well, yes, it is. When you say that's just my perspective, is that supposed to be like something that I deny? Something that you deny? Like what?
Well, the
It's
point is, what he's trying to say is like, look, you claim my position is absurd. I deny that my position is absurd, right? So that's what he's trying to say. So sort of to
oh yeah,
soften the
but
rhetorical blow.
yeah, but okay. So there's two things to say there. The first thing is that the word absurd is polysemous. The second thing is presumably the understanding of absurd that's being used is absurd to PkD because that means something different than absurd to PkD's opponent, right? So if you go into a discussion and the initial claim is it is absurd to PkD, that is now true, right?
Established. Yeah.
Now, a further thing that could be said if he just says something like, "Oh, I would have never disagreed with that. I just had a different impression going into the discussion." You could go one step further and say, if you had the impression that by absurd, I mean absurd by most people's lights, I think that's also true. And then you could go into that. And I mean, if they're just going to say something like, "Oh, by absurd, I only thought that you would mean absurd to me," you could just say,
Yeah.
"Well, you just had the wrong impression. Why would that be interesting?" If I go and talk to a psychopath, right, who says, "No, actually, my views are not absurd," it's actually reasonable to presume that when they say that, right, they're saying something like, "Oh, these are actually normal views," as in, like, these are not things that people would look at and find deranged. It sounds reasonable, these common kinds of words. Um, and so if he's going into the discussion with that presumption, it's just strange. Like, why would you think that I came here only to prove that you find it absurd? Like, of course, I'm not going to commit myself to that because you could be deranged. You could say throwing babies in the microwave is not absurd to you. I'm not making a claim on what's absurd to you. I'm just making a claim on what's almost universally absurd in the
Well,
sense of
if you
like,
look at, sorry to cut you off, but if you look at to the side chat, it's because if you said something interesting about throwing babies in the microwave. He said it's okay on his view. He prefers if a lion eats that baby in the picture, and he says, "Well, I deny that that it's a human because it doesn't have whatever it was. I don't remember. It was something silly."
okay, that one, I don't even believe that he's serious about that. That's crazy. That's like,
And that was his actual view, because in the beginning he was playing, right? He was saying, well, I'm sort of a strong vegetarian, right? I'm just going to play the meat eater to make my point. And when you say, for example, well, that's unethical to most people, he'll just say, well, if we go back in history, many things were unethical to Christians. He would make this type of analogies, you know?
Oh, I mean, so first off, going back in history is similar to just going into some different world where people would have different preferences, but that's just not the world you made a claim about, right? You didn't make a claim about a Christian world where everyone has different preferences. You made a claim about, the actual world. So
Yeah.
I don't know why that would be relevant. He's like, yeah, but if everyone liked throwing babies into lions' mouths, then it wouldn't be absurd. Yeah, but PkD didn't make a claim about lion world. He made a claim about our world.
Yeah.
It's just like so irrelevant.
There was something funny that he said, that he thinks that upon reflection, people would agree that it's okay to kill humans if they didn't have personhood or something like this. Oh boy.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go into that because the person just speaks well too much. And then his actual position is like, look, he's like a vegetarian who eats meat. Well, I don't know how that's a vegetarian, but let's say I've said something coherent. He only eats meat provided by the kindergarten that he works in, right? So his workplace gives him meat and he eats it instead of throwing it. And then he makes two claims. His lifestyle produces less suffering compared to the vegan lifestyle. What do you think of that? And then I'll give you the second claim.
His lifestyle produces less suffering than the vegan lifestyle, and his evidence for that claim is what?
No empirical evidence. He's just making an argument.
I mean, yeah, I would just say a couple things. The first thing is I'm highly skeptical of that, But the second thing to say is I take it that vegans' lifestyles are not causing any suffering in the sense of you're not performing any positive actions that would violate the negative rights of creatures. So it could be that one has some lifestyle that generates a world with even less suffering than a vegan, like if you're vegan and you donate to charity. But that wouldn't mean that you're causing less negative rights to be violated. It just sounds like you're violating as few negative rights as vegans, and then you're also fulfilling someone's positive rights, which is obviously different in an important way because people don't see positive and negative rights in the same way, right? If you violate someone's negative rights, that's considered something morally condemnable. But if you don't fulfill someone's positive rights, that's usually not something that you'd get condemned for. You're not going to get condemned for not donating to a charity, but you will get condemned for stealing from a homeless person. So whatever he's saying, it doesn't even matter because I don't take it. Like, even if his claim turned out to be true, I don't take it that vegans are violating any negative rights of animals if they're actually, practicing a vegan lifestyle.
Let me give you the argument. So the argument is as follows. Premise one is every purchase, like even if it's a vegan one, causes some suffering to animals. Premise two, he doesn't make like any purchases. Conclusion, his lifestyle doesn't cause suffering, or something like this was the argument. Basically, he wants to say, look, you as a vegan buy products from the grocery store and I don't, therefore you cause more suffering than me.
Yeah, so right away, the argument's not deductively valid, but also I'll just mention I reject premise one. So there's
That's
that.
what I did. That's what
I reject premise one. Yeah, no, I don't think vegans purchasing products causes animal suffering. It actually causes animal rescue, if anything, as far as I understand.
Look what I asked him. What's the empirical evidence that if we stopped crop farming, we would get less animal suffering on the net. Because you also, like, if we don't have the crop land, we're going to have like wild land. And what's the evidence is that in these wild lands, less animals would die and suffer compared
Yeah,
to
you
the
could
crop.
point out that spreadsheet difference. But another important thing is to get him to agree on the principle of the matter. You got to say, okay, look, if it turned out that, the situation where a vegan purchases the blueberries actually generates a world of less death than the situation where a vegan doesn't purchase the blueberries, like doesn't purchase anything, would you agree then that the vegan is not causing animal suffering? If he says yes to that, then I would move to saying, okay, well, now look, you don't have the comparative spreadsheet showing that there actually is more animal death on one side than the other. So you shouldn't be making the claim that vegans are causing any suffering. Because some
Right.
people will somehow deny that principled point, where, like, if you're taking no action, there's death X. And then if you do take the action of buying blueberries, the death count is X minus Y, meaning that it's now actually lower, Y being some positive integer. So, like, you'd expect that the number is going to go down by some amount. So the world of blueberry purchase is actually a lower death world, yet somehow that world causes death, but not purchasing anything is not causing death. Whatever's meant by causing death there has nothing to do with increasing death count, so it's not even important if he has some bizarre semantic of death.
Right. The next thing that he said is the predation thingy. Oh boy.
Well, he just says, like, predation is, like, always okay or something.
Well, he's saying, like, look, I never heard of a position where, like, people argue against predation. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have Lance, you have me, you have Fallen, you have Avi, you have Ask Yourself, right? So many people that hold that position.
You also have everyone who watches The Walking Dead. You think anyone sides with the fucking zombies? Like, what the fuck?
Well, then I
Jesus
asked him,
Christ.
like, look, you know the helicopter hypothetical, where you're on a helicopter and you see a lion attacking a gazelle, and you basically ask the person whether or not they should shoot. In his way, I said whether or not he prefers to shoot, because he was like an error theorist and he was very angry if I use shoot instead of, like, preferred, right? So you have to switch the language. You got to be very careful. And he says, well, I would shoot the lion, right? Sorry, I wouldn't shoot the lion, but if it was a human baby, he would shoot, right? So then I asked, name the trait, and he says, well, human, personhood, and exhibits more capabilities.
So, I mean, babies don't have more capabilities, but let's just leave that aside for a second. I mean, pointedly, he said, unless I'm missing something, I thought he said that he's just okay with predation in general. Is he just only okay with predation on non-human animals? And that's what he said before? Or, because, like, I'm wondering how the conversation got there. Like, what was the context of him talking about predation?
Well, he just says, well, that he never seen a vegan to hold that view, and I actually said that I hold that view. And then I thought it would be, a good conversation to press him there, right? To show the consequences of that position, because the whole conversation, we talked 5 hours. He talked with Zebra here, very nice guy, defends veganism in German, has a YouTube channel. Then he talked with me for many hours, and all he did was not talk from his position, but from a hypothetical meat eater's position that wouldn't agree with anything. So you have this meat eater who, no matter what consequence you show, they would say, yeah, it's like non-absurd, right? even if you show like slavery and such things, and he would say, yeah, it's unreasonable for this meat eater to change that view. But then when he gave his view about predators, I was like, let me hit him, right? Now that's his actual view. So that was the context. It's long.
Okay. Yeah, so he's never seen a vegan have a problem with predation. Yeah, I mean, there are even more obvious examples of predation that's bad. For example, orcas will, for fun, not for food, but just for fun, predate on creatures, just rip them apart, torture them, toy with them. And I wonder if he really thinks that vegans would prefer for the orcas to randomly seek out innocent, like dolphins, for example, and just torture them. Like, what the fuck? I mean, yeah, this guy just has no idea what a vegan's actual values are, for one. For two, people in general, I'm not convinced actually like predation. There's actually something I remember seeing, or there's some kind of research on how people react to things like Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, when those channels show like penguins getting predated on by seals, or seals getting predated on by certain kinds of whales. And people always seem to have like some remorseful reaction to those creatures getting predated on. They always feel bad, like when they see like the baby penguin getting scooped up by like a hawk or something. People don't like that, as far
Right.
as what I've seen. So forget vegans, even people who aren't vegans don't seem to like this, as far as I understand. And we can use even more obvious examples. Does he really think that if there's like some stray dog, that people wouldn't be in uproar if someone decided to take that stray dog and make like some dog stew out of them? No. He would be very confused if he really thought society in general wouldn't be disgusted at that. Obviously, because there's
Oh, well,
cognitive dissonance between dogs and other creatures.
well, look what he said, right? I just even gave him like a stronger example. I said if somebody is like a racist, then we argue against their view, and presumably the racist is like coherent in their position, right? Um, and he says, well, what are you going to say against that person? You cannot say anything which reasonably would change their position. And his idea of reasonable being only to have either to have a contradiction, like a contradiction in terms, or that you find out some conclusion contradicts your preferences. Anything out of that is unreasonable. What you say about those semantics?
Um, and that's the only way something absurd can be dug up. Yeah, that's just not
No,
how people use the word absurd. People will call you absurd if you say you're okay with throwing babies in the microwave. That's just how people use the word. That's a very idiosyncratic use of the word. So whatever he's talking about is not restraints on the word that are helpful in any way to what people are typically meaning when they talk about what's important. There are many things important to people outside of contradictions. Someone can be consistently a psychopath. Like, the fuck?
yeah, but he's saying what's outside of that, right?
Yeah, things that are out of accord with common preferences. An
Yeah,
example
and
would
then
be
he said,
throwing babies in microwaves.
yeah, and then he would say, well, look about in the past when people were Christian, they would prefer everybody to be Christian, and if you were not a Christian, they would like punish you or something, right? And
But
he
those are
would
just
try
not
to
common
defend,
preferences. That's the
right?
point. Those are just not common preferences. Common preferences are the ones that we have today as it's defined. So
Right.
it, that's just like not interesting at all. Imagine, okay, let me show you how dumb that is. Imagine if I said, oh, yeah, being reasonable in the field of science is being somewhat in line with the scientific consensus. Having like a reasonable view on quantum physics is having some view that's in line with, any of the consensus models right now. And then he says something like, well, what if the consensus was that God was the one who caused all these like various physical phenomena? It's like, that's just not the consensus. Like, yeah, you could say someone would be likely wrong if they had that view, but that hypothetical is just not the world we live in. How dumb is it to bring that up as if that has any relevance to what we're talking about when we talk about scientific consensus? Does that not illustrate how deranged it is to bring that up? Like,
Okay, so hold on. I think here is one of the interesting parts with respect to that he says. So it was something like this. When it comes to accepting a consensus, right? You have a reason to change your behavior, but not your way of thinking. So he's making a distinction between your action and how you think about it. What's your view towards that?
not your way of thinking. So
I can give
he thinks
example.
that.
So look, if me and you go in a Christian country where the non-Christians are persecuted, and we say, well, we are an atheists, right? And they
Yeah,
say,
I
well, okay,
understand that. There's this pragmatic issue of how people around you are going to treat you if you don't conform to some views. But even
yeah,
on the way of thinking level, with the example I gave, if one has truth seeking desire, they would have an interest in changing their way of thinking in, terms of hearing about a scientific consensus on a matter.
yeah.
Like, if they're truth seekers, that is.
Yeah, but
And
he's saying, but then he gonna say about ethics. Look, there is no objective truth about ethics, so it wouldn't matter if most people disagree.
oh, I mean, when he says doesn't matter, that also depends, right? So look, yeah, he could say like, I just don't value what other people think or something, right? And that's fine. But it actually is true that many people do value what other people think. Research has shown this, like peer pressure is a real fucking thing. Um, hive mind thinking, conformity, these are all things that are typical to people. If he's just saying he doesn't have that, it's kind of similar to just saying he just doesn't have the desire to seek truth. So he doesn't have any reason to change his thinking. Like, yeah, you might not be a truth seeker. And there's no truth of the matter to whether you should, like he would say, seek truth. But we would all say that you're kind of a loser for that, or you're kind of weird for that, or we don't understand why. That just seems stupid or strange, kind of cringe if you're not a truth seeker. But there's nothing we could say like it is true that you should seek truth or something. There's no disanalogy between those two.
Would be interesting to see how you would approach such a person, because they talk a lot, they make multiple points at time. I think you would do very well against such person. And to me, it took like fucking 5 hours to bring it to the Reductio.
I mean, already as you're describing him, if I were to enter a conversation, since you're saying he's a rambler, I would just enter the conversation with a proposition that's clear. Like, I would go in making it clear that what I mean by absurd is out of a line with common norms. And then I would just defend that proposition so that there's no weaseling. So I could get him to concede on the claim. And then if he says, why does it matter? I'm like, that is tangential to the current claim at hand. Now, maybe if you're curious about what it means for it to matter, we could talk about that after you concede the claim that I made. That's just the only route I would take with someone who rambles like this.
Yeah, so I think the proposition was, if you
If
are a
you're not,
meat-eater error theorist, entity is not a problem for you.
NTT is not. Oh, so he put forward a claim. Well, I don't even know if I disagree with that. It would just depend on what he means by problem for him.
Yeah, so by problem he means either a contradiction, is going to be entailed, or you would find something which is out of accordance with his preferences. That's a problem.
Oh yeah,
But
I'm not gonna claim. I mean, I could be like somewhat skeptical of that if I don't know someone, but I wouldn't strongly claim that that's not true. That could just be true, but that's just not that interesting to say. Like, it's also not going to be a problem for someone who's okay with, you know, just enslaving like humans or something.
yeah, but you're gonna think that, let's say I made the claim and I'm the error theorist meat eater, right? And I say, Fallen, my view is perfectly consistent, and none of the facts you gonna mention, the descriptive facts, are contradicting my preferences, right? Um, so there is not going to be internal problem in terms of consistency of the view, but you certainly think that view is problematic in some other sense, right?
Oh, yeah, there are other senses, not the sense that he's going in with. And I could talk about those, right? And then I could put forward some of those senses and see if he disagrees. But on the original sense, right, there's not like something that I see that's going to make me think for sure there's a problem on his sense when I talk to him. But that's just not important because
Yeah.
his sense of problematic makes it so that NTT is not problematic for a serial killer.
Uh-huh. But by the way, yeah, he agreed. It's not problematic for a serial killer, and for racist, it's not going to be problematic in the same sense. But by the way, I think I would even reject his proposition, because when I started running NTT on him, in the end, I think his view actually ends up being self-contradictory. By the way, he couldn't manage the coherence. Imagine that.
Oh yeah, like yeah, I mean it may very well end up being that he also fucks up his game and he
Yeah,
contradicts himself.
yeah.
That's
Even if the people are confident, I don't think we have a good reason into granting the coherency of the view prior to examination.
yeah.
But can
Oh
you
yeah, I
say,
mean, yeah, what's up?
yeah, can you say more about the other types of problems which you are going to propose? Let's say I were to say, look, my view is coherent. I accept the entailments. I know the facts around it. Um,
Yeah,
what are
here's
the
an
problems?
example of some problems. So let's say that you know, I run NTT on someone and it results in them updating their view. This may be a problem for, quote, their view because they no longer have their original view if they've updated their view. If they update what traits they name, if they change the architecture of their traits, then it seems like it was a problem for whatever their original view was going in, such that they actually had to change it. So
Yeah, that
there's
happens
an
very
example
often,
of
by
problem.
the
Oh, it happens almost every fucking time. Maybe it happened in your discussion with him. Um, other things that could
way.
be
Yeah.
considered problems are, the view, the view not being palatable to like literally anyone, like everyone calling him a disgusting piece of shit and generating this pragmatic problem. Like he may not care if people internally um have these thoughts about him, but how they might act towards him now, he even agreed, would result in a change of his behavior. And him saying something out loud, like, I think it's okay to just rape and murder everyone or something, for example, that would be generating, at the very least, a pragmatic problem where everyone around him is going to shame him, be disgusted at him, think lower of him, have zero respect for him.
He conceded to that, but then he made a distinction. He's saying, look, um, that only counts, the pragmatic reasoning only counts in favor of me changing my behavior, but not changing the view. The view remains untouched.
That's if the other thing I described didn't take place, where his view actually updates in some way. But regardless, I'll just agree. Yeah, it's just a pragmatic problem if you're a psycho. Yeah, still a problem. Your question was answered. That is a problem. Updating your view would be a problem for the original view you went in with. And there are many other senses of problem which he might not encounter because he's just too psychopathic, right? But I mean, I don't know what he's asking for this for, but if I just satisfy his curiosity by explaining these other notions of problem,
No, he probably got a phone call. But I'm like, look, when Fallen comes back, I'm gonna say something like this. So my view is coherent. I'm like a psychopath. I accept all entailments. I agree there is a pragmatic problem, but what's more to that? I think all of us are gonna come to like a very similar conclusion in the end. By the way, Zebra, we can move to our server if we make
I'm back.
too much noise here. Welcome back. I was saying, look, so my view is like, so the view is like coherent. The meat eater is like a psychopath. He agrees throwing babies into microwave, right? Which, by the way, this person agreed to that. He's like, yeah, the lions could kill babies, but I'm not gonna call them babies because they don't have personhood. And what was it, like something stupid? They don't exhibit capabilities. Okay, so you have that view, and I'm gonna claim that's my position, argue against my position, besides you saying that I have pragmatic problem. I agree I have pragmatic problem. But notice that my view is coherent and there is nothing you can say about it. That's what he's getting at, basically.
And there's nothing you could say about it? Well, there are things I could say about it, but like I don't like that rhetoric sounding wording. Like there's nothing you could say. No, there's many things I could say. That sounds like you're a disgusting, horrible person. You sound like a fucking psycho.
Yeah.
That's like something I could say about it. If what
Yeah.
he meant to say is, oh, you can't say there's a contradiction, as in that the view is internally incoherent. Okay, congratulations. I'll grant that it's nakedly coherent. Good job. And then you can't say what else? Like I don't know what else there is that I can't say. Like, yeah, the only thing I can't say is that it's not nakedly coherent. That's about it. Like, is that all he's saying?
Yeah.
Like, good job. Wow. You managed to form a coherent thought. In any case, yeah, I don't know if he just had like I don't know if he just had like some misunderstanding of what NTT's expectation is. There's not this expectation for a contradiction every time, because it sounds like that's all he's saying you won't get out of him. It's like, yeah, you won't get a contradiction out of people all the time because there are other pathways that NTT leads to. NTT can lead to someone not espousing some contradiction, but them in their head being pretty uncomfortable with the view they have, and maybe even in combination with other people seeing, yikes, you know, signing off on just killing people if they, you know, are low enough IQ. Tough stuff, huh?
Oh, but Fallen, you're just saying it's your preferences. You're just saying that, right? You're just saying it's against your preferences, but you didn't prove that killing disabled people for food is wrong. It's just your preferences, man.
I don't know how, as a subjectivist, I could prove such a thing.
Oh,
Like, neither of us think that that's coherent. Like,
then why are you arguing, Fallen? The only reason you could argue is to show that the view is false. Then you're not having a debate. Then you're having a discussion. The person is
well, there's
acting
just
like
some
this, by the way.
misunderstanding. There's just a misunderstanding of what the claim was going in. The claim was never your view is wrong. I don't even know what that means. So how could that be my claim? The claim was simply that your view is strongly out of line with common norms. That's the
Oh,
claim.
but you could tell me that from the beginning, and I could have agreed, and we didn't have to get into a dialectic. Why you didn't do that, Fallen?
Well, then I guess you simply agree with the claims of NTT, and the reason I didn't do that is because I'm only in some hypothetical conversation, you sick fuck.
Well,
It's not actually present.
look, as a master theory, as a master student error theorist, I can't agree with that. Because look, for error theory, Fallen, it's all moral propositions are false. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I'm pointing out to you is, look, we were talking about the sense of preferences in, like, we have this conversation going on, right? You're showing entailment from my preferences or discovering what my preferences are, right? That's what's happening. And then when you press me into a corner, I'm gonna, let's say you ask me, well, is it okay to kill babies for fun or for food, right? And I say, well, no, that's sorry, or I say, well, no, that's not okay because like error theory. So I'm changing, not to bite the bullet. I'm not answering from my preferences, but I'm answering from the sense of error theory. Whenever you make it uncomfortable for me, there was a bit of that was going on. You understand what I mean? So the metaethic is going to come in every time you press, and you need to fix semantics from the start again.
How is that distinct, though? Like saying, oh, I'm not saying this is my preference, I'm saying something like, because I thought an error theorist has no problem saying I have a preference for X. Like, what?
Oh, yeah, but if his preference is going to be repugnant, right? Let's say he has a preference for, for factory farming babies, for example, right? Then he's
Mm-hmm.
going to say that's not true, but he's going to say, without you asking, he's going to say the justification from that is coming from error theory. So he's not honestly answering the question because you're asking him a question on applied ethics about his preferences and how he would act, right? But he is giving you a meta-ethical answer.
Oh, that's just a tracking error from him, because I'm just asking about his moral preferences, not some other thing.
You are too charitable. I don't think it's a tracking error. I think he just does it on purpose. He inserts
I
error
mean, what I mean is like, what I mean is like, okay, I could say it's a category error. I'm just like, saying maybe someone could have failed to track, but because that's just.
And the question for you is how to hold semantics constant. When you feel your opponent is every time you get a good press on the view, they will give you a category error answer like that, which to the public is going to sound like, oh, this person said something cool, right? But then he's basically speaking in some irrelevant sense.
Yeah, by the way, I actually, after thinking about it for a second, don't think that that's more that's actually less charitable, because to say someone committed a tracking error is to say they have a category error and they didn't have the mental wherewithal to understand why it's a category error. Like, it's like you're an idiot after fucking up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't think the person is an idiot or anything. I just think they do everything in their power to avoid a conclusion which are deemed uncomfortable. So look, let me be the meat eater for 1 second. And you ask me to name the trait, and I say intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? And then you turn out and you say, is it okay to factory farm a mentally disabled people? And I say no.
Well, I would actually say cognitively matched people.
And then I say no. So there is a contradiction, right?
Yeah, then I'd be sure there's a contradiction.
But I say, look, there isn't a contradiction, because when you ask me, whether or not I think it's okay to kill humans but not animals, I was answering from my preferences. But then when you gave the counter example, I was answering you in the sense of error theory, not of my preferences. So there is no contradiction, Fallen. Don't you know that error theory thinks all moral propositions are false?
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
understand?
Of course. Of course. But now you're just telling me that you decided to interpret two questions that had the same wording differently for no apparent reason. So are you sure you didn't just ad hoc the view, or?
That's exactly what's happening, yeah. He would invoke error theory at multiple points in the discussion, and he would say, well, according to the error theory is this and that.
Yeah, but I would just say, like, look, I asked the same type of question twice. Why did you assume the second one was a different question? This is just like stupid. It's like if I say, hey, do you like this candy? Yeah. Do you like this muffin? No. What? But that muffin has that candy in it. Oh, well, when you asked if I liked this muffin, I thought you were asking some sort of, food realist question. And I just can't really say that there are any facts about whether the motherfucker, no, this is stupid. No one in their right mind would engage in a conversation like that.
Well, he does.
Yeah, he's not in his right mind.
I think you would do very well against this person. I think you've actually talked to them. Their name is like, shit. NuncEstBibendum or something. I think you know this person.
I may have talked to them before. Are they in our server?
No, but in politics you've probably met him. And I
Oh,
think one day, one morning, when I woke up, you were telling me that you've talked to that person. I'm pretty sure. Shit. Let me see.
I do have some vague recollection of talking to someone that you said was like this German guy, and I think I sort of remember his cadence. He's just like a very kind of evasive person or something.
I send you like a screenshot of his Discord. This guy.
Let's see.
You've
I'm
talked
not
to them.
sure if I don't know. I wouldn't remember. But yeah, if he's ever around when I'm awake, I'd be happy to talk to him, I guess. Though I don't really think there's much work to do after what you did, because he's just doing the level 0 Carnus thing of, oh yeah, I'm just a psycho, and that's my only claim, that I'm a consistent psycho. It's like, okay, good job.
Well, but that's just your preferences.
Actually, there's just something definitional that would categorize him as a psycho. Like, set my preferences aside, it turns out that the dictionary use of the word just accurately applies to him. So when I make the statement, he's just saying he's consistently a psycho, that's not something that hinges on some preference of mine, because nothing in the definition of psycho says Fallen's preference or anyone's preference, I don't think.
Yeah, but if we were in a Christian world, then everybody would be a psycho. So what's your point?
Yeah, if we were in a Christian world, the consensus on physics would be different. That doesn't mean that the consensus of physics has the same meaning in that world as it does in this world. They're just talking about a different definition of the word psycho.
Yeah, but you see, because those things change, right? Because like relativism is true. Then it's like just your preferences against mine, you know?
Yeah, I would just say that there's not an understanding of what was said, because what was said is that it's irrespective of anyone's preferences whether or not you are categorized as this word by its definition. For example, whether you are categorized as a human right, is not going to hinge on anyone's preferences. You're just going to go to the dictionary and see what the word means, right? And saying, well, let's say we live in some other world where, we all had like different genetics and bodies, and the word came up with some different, context, right? That's just some different world using the word with a different semantic, which is not the
Yeah.
semantic I'm referring to, which is how it's used in the dictionary in our world. Completely uninteresting response. I don't know why you bring that up.
Here is another interesting point. He also he suggested my view of the word ethically reasonable is somewhat idiosyncratic, and I don't agree with that. Because for him, something to be ethically reasonable only needs to be coherent. And I'm saying no, like it needs also to be virtuous, right, or good.
What? He thinks that people would say that, like, people that torture their children are reasonable. He thinks that's the common. What the fuck?
Yeah.
What?
And he
Does this guy
thinks
go outside?
look, I even checked, I asked him, well, how about if the racist who we examine their position, they know all the descriptive facts and their view is perfectly coherent. Would you say their view is ethically reasonable? And he says yes.
Well, you got to make sure to word the question. Would you say that people would say their view is ethically reasonable? Because he said idiosyncratic. He's making a claim about how other people. This guy can use it however the fuck he wants, but will
Well,
other
yeah,
people?
there were two claims. The first claim was that his definition is like the dictionary definition, and that my definition is the idiosyncratic one. So, obviously, he thinks that his definition is like the
I'm
common
just going to
definition.
go ahead and say he's crazy if he really thinks that most people would call, Nazis reasonable, because their view is coherent as far as I understand.
Well,
Yeah.
even I checked on that. He says, yeah, it's reasonable, but it's gonna be good if they change their view. So look, it's just a semantic disagreement. I'm not trying to put weight on it. What he tells is reasonable. So reasonable, ethically reasonable consists of two things. One, free of internal contradiction on his view and not contradicting any of the preferences of the person who holds the view.
Yeah, that is what he means. I grant that that's probably what he means when he says that. I just do not think, again, that that's what other people mean at all.
Yeah, me neither. I don't even think it's in the same ballpark, but I could grant him that's what other people think. I just really hate
I'm gonna
such
tell
this.
you. I'm gonna tell you on what level of crazy I think that is. Like, I think he's insane for saying that. Like, that's like as crazy as saying when people say the word asshole, they mean someone who likes to eat oatmeal. Like
Well, hold on.
that.
Like, who can say something that's not what he said? Well, you can write down your understanding on how he framed it, but I think there were like uh, two components for ethically reasonable. Yeah, it was something strange. Anyway, sorry, Fallen, continue.
Oh, you were responding to side chat. Yeah. So to me, him actually thinking, well, I don't know like how the word reasonable translates in German, but I know for a fact in English, right? When
Vernünftig.
people say that word reasonable, they are definitely fucking not going to be saying it toward people that are Nazis, people that are rapists, people that are like all these different kinds of things that are out of line with common norms. Like almost ever, just because those views are coherent. They won't say it. And this seems common sense to me. I don't know if there's like a different culture in Germany. I doubt it, to be honest. So Yeah. That's all I can really say about that.
He's pink to come back, I guess. Maybe you're gonna get him. Maybe if you're lucky. I would be like, if that could be facilitated, that you talk to him with him for a little bit, I would just be really curious how you deal with that mess.
I mean, is there really much else to say? It seems like you already established that he agrees with the proposition his view is out of line with common norms.
Out of line with common norms. Yeah, he would agree with that.
I mean, then I guess there's not much for me to press with that. Let's see what else I could think of. Well, I guess something he might disagree on is that word reasonable. He really thinks that the way most people are using it is going to be to refer to a view that's coherent. I mean, I don't have much to say about that other than it seems like it's just common sense, and to deny that sounds kind of insane. Like, I'm not gonna have some sort of, survey data to pull for that, and I just don't think it's needed because it's just so obviously wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyway.